In this episode, we're talking about a blockbuster Western from the early 90s. No, not Dances with Wolves. No, not Unforgiven. We're saddling up and driving the herd in with City Slickers. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. So happy you could join us on this excursion that Eric and I take weekly, W-E-E-K-L-Y, weekly, not weekly, through our music and movie history, right? Is that a fair assessment?
That's a very fair assessment, yes. Yep.
Okay.
And we're having a ball doing it.
We're having a ball doing it. As long as Eric can get the right cord for his microphone, we're good.
Yeah. The glitches.
I was about to tie a string to a can and send somebody all the way down the street to him so we can record it that way.
Yeah.
Old methods still work. The string in the can is the final option we have.
Well, you want the best quality though, don't you? You know,
yeah.
I mean, I'm only looking out for you, you know, so.
But we'll take what we can get. If we need to go walkie-talkie or whatever we need to do, we're going to do it to bring what we feel is the best in music and movie podcasting to you each week. But Eric is right. Quality counts. That's one of the big things. This has to have a nice warm, our voices have to have a nice warm, dulcet tone to them. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So when we start,
we don't want you driving, listening to this and then like going off the road. So there's got to be a balance between a nice, soft, pleasing tone, but not sleepy time.
Right. Exactly. And we don't, we, goodness, we because we want to, and if we start crying, if we start laughing, we wanted to express the full timbre of our voices you
want to hear the full dynamic range.
That's right.
As it was like on a Maxell cassette, it used to say dynamic range.
We try to be high def here
back in the day, but we do the best we can. So thank you for joining us, though. Again, you can check us out on social media if you like. 3324 podcast. That'll work on Facebook and Instagram. So go ahead and hit us up over there. We'd appreciate it. We also post video versions of these episodes on YouTube as well. So if you want something in the background, you want your TV on, go ahead and subscribe there. You'll get there's a lot of content. We're not going in order. I'm just kind of putting episodes up willy-nilly. So they're just kind of going up there, not in number order, but just in order of what I think might be interesting, I guess. So we'll get to them eventually.
Yeah, very selective. It's neat. Yeah,
very few episodes we didn't record video. Yeah,
kind of shocking seeing our faces up there, but hey, got to do what you got to do.
Especially on like a 65-inch TV. It's like, geez,
that's right.
I'm like, God, clip those eyebrows. To myself.
I gotta wipe the polish off the top of my head, the cue ball effect.
The beads of sweat. So we've got a great one for you this episode, 1991.
Yeah.
It's funny how I was thinking. I was watching it. I watched it twice, and as I was watching it the second time, I'm like, wow, 1991. I'm like, this is like Dances with Wolves and Unforgiven era.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, this is a Western, so it's just another facet of that early 90s of Westerns being kind of, people were cashing in on them.
Coming back. Yeah. A few years later, Tombstone would be a thing. And
so even in the comedy genre.
Right.
Although upon watching this, let's get to this. I'll say this and then we'll get to the stats. Upon watching this, it's more like more like a drama with comedic elements to it.
It's definitely
a lot of serious stuff that happens in this film.
It surprises you. Yeah. And we'll get to that. Yep.
So we're going to break it down, but we first start, if you're new to the podcast, we give you some factual information before we give you the opinions and the tall tales and the fables. But we give you some factual stuff, and here we go with it. It came out in June of 1991, directed by Ron Underwood, $26 million budget, runaway hit. $180 million box office. This just kind of, God, something happened with this film. I don't know what it was, but, and then it was nominated for one Academy Award, amazingly enough. And the one Academy Award it was nominated for, they took home Oscar gold.
There's gold. Okay, that
Come
was that
get
one.
me, come and get me, come and get me.
That one wasn't bad. Okay,
Not bad.
Your Palance isn't bad.
It's not hard because he didn't say that much in these films.
That's right.
So Jack Palance won for Best Supporting Actor. Let's talk about that first. Okay. 1991 Academy Awards. Here are the nominees for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
Michael Lerner for his role in Barton Fink, which was a Coen Brothers film. So a high, prestigious.
Right.
Coen Brothers were artsy fartsy and the indie darling. So it's like, okay, Michael Lerner. Ben Kingsley for his role in Bugsy.
Yeah. Yep.
Harvey Keitel nominated for his role. Harvey Keitel nominated for his role in Bugsy as well.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones nominated for his role in the epic JFK. And Jack Palance as Curly Washburn in City Slickers.
Amazing.
And Jack Palance had 12 minutes of screen time in this film.
Yeah. So do you think it was a gratuitous thing, or you think it was an honor?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm coining this term. You're hearing it first.
Mm-hmm.
The Sean Connery effect.
Yeah, I agree.
Palance had been nominated, I think, twice before, like way back early in his career, the 50s, in the 50s, I think for Shane. I think I could be wrong. And never won. And Palance was one of those guys that was just kind of banging around, and he was doing like Ripley's Believe It or Not TV show. Remember he would do he played Dracula, I think.
Yes, he did. He was a made for TV. Dan Curtis. Yeah. They made for TV, and he played Dracula. Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So his renaissance would start. Me, Eric, and our friend Johnny, his renaissance would start as Boss Grissom in Tim Burton's Batman. That's when like Palance kind of resurfaced. Why don't we make a deal?
I always, as a kid, I used to see him in a lot of these older films, and he always scared me for some reason.
Yeah, creepy looking guy.
He had those features, that mouth, and the way he talked was always. Yeah, I always remembered him as Dracula. I think more than he was more memorable as Dracula to me as a kid for some stupid reason than even Christopher Lee. And Christopher Lee is like the ultimate Dracula with the bloodshot eyes.
Yeah, from the 60s and the 70s.
I don't think Palance had fangs.
His teeth are so small they couldn't put fangs on him anyway.
That's right.
Let's say this son of a bitch makes a connection between us and Axis Chemicals. What kind of damage we looking at? He was just so great in Batman.
He was hilarious.
He's the only guy that could go toe to toe with Jack Nicholson, like being his boss. Like,
your life won't be worth spit.
Yeah, he's the only guy that could go toe to toe.
And I guess he had COPD or something, because he was always had that breathy, breathing heavy, even when he wasn't talking. He's like, but
Give me Lieutenant Eckhart.
It added to the absolute
he had that voice, that gravelly voice,
And even in this film,
and he's a big guy, and he's a large man too. So he's imposing. He's got that gravitas. So when he won in 1991, it was definitely a career type Oscar. Mm-hmm. Tommy Lee Jones would follow that up in 93 with The Fugitive. Was definitely he had a long career as well, and he got shafted for this, right? I remember in 91, I was like, I was so on the JFK bandwagon with Oliver Stone.
Oh yeah.
That I was like, Tommy Lee Jones has to win. Like, he was so superb in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Bugsy, okay, whatever. But everything was about JFK. That everybody was talking about that film. Was it a conspiracy? Wasn't? Whatever. Right. It doesn't matter what you thought. Everybody was talking about that film and questioning and having conversations. And Tommy Lee Jones was excellent as his portrayal of Clay Shaw. So I'm like, I remember Oscar now. I'm like, this is a shoo-in. It's got to be Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
And then this guy comes out, wins, and then he starts doing one-arm push-ups on stage to show how much of a man He is Jack Palance.
Yeah, he's certainly a caricature. Like he and that's.
I mean, that endeared him to everybody fell in love with him.
Of course, but
at that point,
do you really need want that you're so late in your career? Is that the way to to really?
Yeah, why not? Because then the next year he came out like pulling
the
large Oscar with his teeth or whatever, and Billy Crystal's on it.
Billy Crystal's on it. Yeah,
you got to embrace it. At that point, you got to embrace it. You know how many second and third wins do you get? And especially for him to be embraced that way, was such a great thing for him. So yeah, Tommy Lee Jones got his due. He got it with The Fugitive, which was well deserved.
Yeah,
but it's kind of that career thing that you saw back then. Connery definitely picked it up for, not that he wasn't great in The Untouchables, but you kind of look at some of those wins and who they're up against. And you can kind of look and be like, not that they don't deserve it, but he was only in this movie for 12 minutes when you talk about it.
Yeah, screen time. But his performance was great. I mean, it's heartfelt. He does the tough guy, but then again, he's also he brings a tear to your eye because of his great monologue when he's talking about the one thing and talking about the girl the only woman he ever fell in love with, and he never got with her. And it's
Billy Crystal's like,
there's a lot
aren't
to
you
say
sad?
about
Like you
this
never, that could have been the love of your life. And he's like, it was, just
choice.
We'll get to that. The nature of all the things all the lessons that are.
Well, I mean, let's face it. He's no stranger to Westerns. He did plenty of them back in the day. And, of course, gangster roles, tough guy roles. So he was perfectly cast for this particular. And, I don't know whose idea it was to cast him.
Well, it was written. Well, the script was written. It was written with Palance in mind. Okay. And then they approached him, and he had some scheduling conflicts. Like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I have the time to do this. So like, oh crap. All right. We need to get somebody else then.
Yeah.
So you know who they approached? Charles Bronson.
That's right. Charles Bronson.
They approached Charles Bronson. Billy Crystal sent him the script, and then Billy Crystal calls him, and Charles Bronson's like, I'm dead by page 53. Like, what are you doing? He literally was like, I'm Charles Bronson. I don't die in films. Like, how could, and Billy Crystal trying to explain like the arc. Well, he needs to die so we can, they can bring the hurt. I don't care. I'm Charles, I don't die. Like, F you. And he like, kind of hung up on him. So they waited a day just to see. He didn't call back. And then Palance got his schedule cleared to do it. And then I think the story goes like a year later when the City Slickers debuted at Cannes, they showed it at Cannes. And like Charles Bronson was there, like, hanging around with like Sean Penn or something. And Billy Crystal saw him and kind of gave him like a nod. And Palance and Bronson like got up and walked away.
That's a great story.
You missed that. Like, you let your,
well, hey,
I'm Charles, because like in Death Wish, he was known for all the Death Wish films at that point, Unkillable, and it's like, come on, man, get over yourself.
That's ego getting in the way
to the max.
No doubt about it. Sure. Yep.
But, so what did you see this back then? I mean, was this something that was?
I did. I saw it in the theater. I actually saw it with. I don't remember who.
It wasn't me.
No, it wasn't you. I might have seen it with our friend John and
friend Johnny.
No, and perhaps his wife.
Okay.
I do remember seeing with her. Did I see it with just her? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Scandal, intrigue. Stop talking now.
Or it could have been with. Yeah, I don't remember. But I know I know she was there.
Yeah,
because I remember, we had a really great time with this film because, she was a big fan of Billy Crystal. And so, we all went and, I guess I saw it with my ex-wife and her. So it might have been just the three of us. Yeah. So
a little outing. I caught it. I didn't see it in the theater. I caught it on afterwards on home video.
Yeah.
And it just, I was just like, this is just really just, it's a feel good, movies in the 90s. I keep saying it, like the 90s was like one of the best decades for film, and let's take a look at 1991 as an example of some of the stuff that City Slickers was swinging against. So we talked about JFK. We talked about Bugsy. You had Cape Fear, which was Scorsese's follow-up to Goodfellas with De Niro. Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, one of the hometown favorites for ours. Point Break, Keanu Reeves and Swayze. Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins only had like 14 minutes of screen time or something like that. Something crazy. And he won a Best Actor Oscar.
Actor. Yep.
Incredible. Yeah. The dumpster fire known as Highlander 2.
Why did you even mention it?
Because I had to, because it's just so annoying that film, it would dare be released.
And we actually went to see it. We actually went to see it. In our shame, we
on the flip side, the Sublime, to steal one of Eric's terms, the Sublime, The Rocketeer.
Yeah, that was a great film.
Which is one of the greatest films that nobody saw. It was so like buried and people just thought it was a goof, but you watch The Rocketeer, then you watch Captain America, the First Avenger, and you're like, oh yeah, same guy directed it.
It's the same guy, same feel, same tone. Yeah, absolutely.
It's all there.
One of the great comic book movies, I think, before
T2.
Marvel.
Terminator 2 came out.
Terminator 2, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yep, came out this year.
Stone Cold with Brian Bosworth. I love that movie. Do you remember Stone Cold?
I do.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in the theater. I did see it on, I think I saw it on cable or something.
Yeah.
But I do remember that
Oliver Stone's The Doors. The Doors came out also in 91. And then
that was
JFK
later in the year, right? That was like,
well, it came out early. No, it came out early 91. JFK came out like December 91.
Okay. I thought it was.
The Doors was the earlier one. And it almost seems like he made The Doors like get it out of the way to make JFK, which was a much better film. As much of a Doors fan as I am, it was just, JFK is just better. But the Spielberg classic Hook came out in 91 as well. Hated that film.
Me too. I was hoping you were being sarcastic there. Facetious for sure. I'm like, no, that is arguably his worst.
Hook made me realize how much I didn't like kids in films. I'm like, it's just like it was just too much.
I agree. It was like Goonies
they're
on
dancing
steroids.
Around and they're just doing goofy stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this. Although Hoffman was really good as Captain Hook. He was
but it just
sympathetic and kind of a little sad and melancholy. And,
it just
he played it up.
It was it
was strange,
an odd film to be sure. But and Robin Williams perfectly cast, I guess. I mean, who else could do that role?
As an adult Pan.
And I guess he was really good at it. But when he kicked into Robin Williams mode, that's the stuff I don't like. Is I never liked Robin Williams stand-up.
Yeah.
But when he kicked into the mode of when he was like full on Peter Pan and he was ring-a-ring and jumping around, I was like, I'm done. This is just crazy. So I don't know.
And we said directed by Ron Underwood, who actually this was his like third film and maybe third directing thing.
Yeah.
Kind of pushed him to the top, but he would only make another like 5 films after this and then go right into TV. Ton of TV work, ton of cable TV work, but he really wasn't able to parlay this into like becoming a big time director as much of a monster hit as this was. He just kind of couldn't. He did like The Mighty Joe Young. That was with Charlize Theron and Adventures of Pluto Nash. I mean, some of these are stinkers,
Yeah, but then he also did the camp classic, the Tremors, which I thought was great. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, which he also got story credit for.
Yeah,
but
another Western, to be so of sorts. So
but then after that, just kind of went head first into television, TV work. So so City Slickers, for those that are unaware, it's kind of a midlife crisis film, basically.
It is. Yep.
The funny thing about it is we saw it before that age of the funny thing is they're complaining that they're 39. Like life is so tough when you're 30. Like back then in 91, 39 was old and it was a midlife crisis age.
I guess so.
I'll take 39 7 days a week and twice on Sundays.
Right?
Like you're bitching about being 39 and like not knowing what to do. But back then that was kind of like, technically it is middle age, I suppose. But so it's the premise of the story is kind of losing touch with yourself. There's 3 main characters. Billy Crystal is Mitch Robbins. Daniel Stern is Phil Berquist.
Yeah.
And the late great Bruno Kirby, who I love, is Ed Ferrillo.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of them, they've been childhood, friends since they were kids, but each one is approaching life from a different angle. Mitch feels like he's trapped in life. He doesn't feel like he's going anywhere. He kind of has kids and like doesn't know what to do with his life.
He's got a job
and then
that he's
his
not
friend
happy
Phil,
with. Yep.
what's that?
He's got a job that just really isn't going anywhere with
fulfilling.
him. It's not fulfilling. So he's got the domestic lifestyle. You got Phil, who is faced with a shrew of a wife and
he wants a good marriage. He just doesn't have one.
He's completely
probably
whipped.
would be okay with that because he says one of the lines he says is, where you are is where you are at this point in your life.
Yeah.
So he kind of accepted it, but I'm sure he would be, if he was in a happy marriage, he would probably be very happy with that. He'd be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, he's married to a woman that fell.
Yeah, she is. And my daddy, because I guess daddy is rich.
I'll call my father.
I'll call my father
what you did.
Yeah.
And then Ed is someone who's afraid of marriage. He's a perpetual bachelor, dating much younger women and kind of living that lifestyle, and always wants to do some crazy adventures to prove, how macho he is,
how shitty his dad was. So his dad was a really bad father. He was abusive, and this is some heavy stuff that we're dealing with here. So yes, it's a very funny movie. The jokes are I think they hold up very well, but but man, when it gets going, it really shocks you, because it's like they get into some really deep conversations, and you find stuff out about the characters, and it's just, it makes you stop and think.
And I haven't watched this film. I could probably say easily in 20 years I haven't watched. I have the DVD. It's probably in my collection sealed somewhere that I never opened, but it was one of those ones that I've always loved and remember it, but never felt the need to kind of pull it out and watch it.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I was thinking our point of view has shifted, because we saw it when we were not even close to that age. Right. And now we're talking about it well past, or somewhat past, the age that they're complaining about.
That's right. And
it doesn't, that's the one thing that doesn't hold up is they had these guys in the ground. It's like, life is over. I'm 39, you get a do-over. It's like people are having kids at 50 years old, 55 years old, starting families,
that's
it's like,
right. Yeah.
Times have certainly changed, but when you're on the other side of this point of view, you kind of, when you're younger than these characters, you're kind of laughing at all these guys are having a midlife crisis. But then when you're on the other side of it, you kind of understand a little bit more about life, which was kind of interesting.
You do, but
not to get too,
right. But the point, I get, they could have made them a little bit older. I don't know, maybe 45, something like that. Because they certainly do look a little bit older than 39 to me. I guess they, actors just are so much younger looking nowadays that, but yeah, I mean, I guess the point is that you to stay young, that's what makes you survive all this, is, you're keeping young at heart. They even have the song by Jimmy Durante in the movie where they're on a cattle drive and they're playing Jimmy Durante as a needle drop.
Young at heart,
so, which is funny. But yeah, I don't know. There are several movies that I've enjoyed over the years, and about this very subject. And one of my favorites is in recent years is Sideways, is another great dramedy. In fact, I think Sideways is a little bit more dramatic than City Slickers is. City Slickers just, it goes in all kinds of different directions. It lends itself to be this sort of like slapstick comedy, at first, and then it turns into this heavy stuff about life, and then it turns into an action movie where they actually go on the cattle drive, and the cattle, Curly dies, and the two guys that they're left with are boozers, and they end up leaving them behind, and it's like they have to bring the cattle in, so it literally turns into like a Western film where it's like a cowboy movie, and that with the music and everything, and it really the
cinematography, all the vistas,
Dean
all that.
Who did Dances
they
with Wolves.
They didn't cheap out on this and go and use sets like they were out there.
The vistas, the Colorado Rock, the Rockies, and
you're in that John Ford country. That
it's an amazing looking film. Really, it's bigger than it should be. It didn't need to be this big. Maybe that's the reason why it did so well, is because
they went on location and you see them doing this. And to that point, kudos to Bruno Kirby. Very allergic to horses.
Oh,
he
really?
needed to get shots. He needed to get shots daily. He needed to be taking medicine daily. He needed air purifiers. For a movie that is basically on horseback a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You got to hand it to Bruno Kirby for stepping up and doing it. He would have issues the second, him and Billy Crystal actually made 3 films together. They were in Spinal Tap together.
Yeah.
Right. Billy Crystal was the mime.
Yeah.
And then Bruno Kirby was the limo driver that loved Frank Sinatra. And then he's talking to Spinal Tap in the limo, and then they roll the window up on him. He's like talking about Sinatra. Oh, you assholes.
Yeah.
And then he was in When Harry Met Sally.
Yes.
He was Billy Crystal's friend.
Best friend. Yep.
And then, and they were really good friends. And then they would make this film together. But then they would have before City Slickers 2, they would have a huge falling out. Which basically they say that it was over like if some of it had to do with money and the script for the second film, and essentially Billy Crystal got Bruno Kirby blackballed from Hollywood. He only made like 5 or 6 films after this. They were great. He was in Sleepers and Donnie Brasco, and then he would pass away in like 2006. But they say that Billy Crystal really just torpedoed his career because of the
Freshman. Wasn't he in The Freshman too?
That was before
Brando.
Yeah, but I think that was before this. I think so. I could be wrong, but he was great in The Freshman too.
Yeah, I remember.
But he didn't do. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of stuff that he did after that. He did The Freshman the year before, 1990.
Okay.
Which was a great film.
It is a great film.
A reuniting of Brando and Bruno Kirby, because Bruno Kirby was in The Godfather.
That's right. Yep.
Young Clemenza, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was.
I did not know that story either. I mean, I thought for sure that the reason why he didn't come back was because of the allergy thing. Like it was just too much for him. But no, wow.
Yeah, no, they had a big falling out, and then they torpedoed him. And some smaller roles. The debut of Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yes.
As Billy Crystal's son.
That's right.
And the kid's got an unmistakable face. It's like,
his claim to fame.
He's got a baby face now, so he looks the same.
Right.
He's just really big now.
His claim to fame is popping that shoulder. Like
popping the shoulder,
popping the shoulder and making faces and whatnot.
Yeah, and my mom said, let's see how you look after 2 kids.
His daughter was played by his
daughter.
His daughter in real life, Billy Crystal.
His real daughter.
Yeah. And I think that Phil was originally supposed to be Rick Moranis, I believe.
Yeah.
I
don't know. He's too.
And he actually signed on to do it, but I guess something happened and he had to step in last minute.
Yeah. I mean, 1991 was very good to Daniel Stern, right? It was Home Alone. I mean, this was this was his time to shine. And then, of course, Yeardley Smith, the voice of Lisa Simpson.
That's right. God, she's
is the girl that Phil gets pregnant, that Daniel Stern's character gets pregnant.
Picture that? Can you picture Daniel Stern and her?
I'm not a child. I'm 20
in a car, like getting it on. I don't
Lisa
know,
Simpson. I'm not a child. I'm 20.
Oh my goodness, she looks like a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah, and she's got that voice, like her.
And
her voice is the same as Lisa.
Yeah, of course. That's
doesn't change.
That doesn't age well. That particular part of the film probably would not go today. They probably wouldn't cast anybody that young. And I think she was actually younger than she's meant to be in the film. Isn't that correct? I think she's only wasn't she only 18 when she made it or something? Or
really?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think she's actually younger than she claims to be in the film. So it's a little weird.
No, she was born in 1964. So she was already 25 or 26.
Really?
Yeah. No. She just has that face. She's got that young.
I could have sworn she was.
Yeah, she's like 25 or 26, but she looks, just like
Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal was 27 in City Slickers. And he's got a kid face.
He went from that right to Brokeback Mountain. There you go.
That's it. Jarhead.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, and you've got the great Tracy Walter, who's a great character actor, teaming, and there's another pairing. Him and Palance were in Batman, in Tim Burton's Batman together. He was Bob.
Yep, Bob.
Jack Nicholson's sideman, the Joker's
number
sideman.
A guy.
So a lot of great, you got Jeffrey Tambor. He, his situation is a little dicey nowadays. persona non grata in Hollywood, but
Yeah.
David Paymer, Josh Mostel, you got a lot of great supporting actors in this film as well. And that's the great thing is having those like familiar faces kind of rounds out the cast, helps.
It does.
Helen Slater, who really
Supergirl,
probably a really great actress, but she did Supergirl as like one of her debut roles, and it just tore, her career was done. Like it was such a, wasn't a great. I saw it in the theater. It wasn't a great.
So did
film.
I think we saw it together actually.
Yeah, it's one of one of those horrible films. But she, unfortunately, she, so she's like in a minor role. Noble Willingham as Clay Stone, the leader, the owner of the ranch. Bill Henderson as the father dentist, Ben Jessup. So a lot of these guys, you've seen them around, like you see their faces. So again, it makes it easy to buy into it because a lot of those character actors, you kind of understand who they are.
Yeah.
And it makes it just that much easy to kind of build the world with familiar faces, and you kind of know.
That's right. Yeah. And
David Paymer, he's always got, he's always that kind of guy, sardonic and sarcastic.
Yeah.
And then Josh Mostel, we would see him pop up again in Billy Madison, I think the next year.
Yeah.
As the principal. He dresses up as a wrestler.
And these guys, to see them in something like this, as like these sort of goofy, they own this chain of ice cream stores and
Barry and
Ira and Barry ice cream. And then you see them in all these like in endless like shows, like, even like, crime shows, like, gangster type stuff. And to see them play these like serious, like prick type roles too is always interesting to see, like, especially David Paymer. I've seen him as like, he's such a bastard. And like, I forget what it might've been
he was in Payback with Mel Gibson too, right?
Yeah, he was. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
He was like,
I remember seeing it was
bookie or low level, like hoodlum.
I'm pretty sure he showed up in The Sopranos at one point. He was, the voice of his mom, Jane Meadows, which is the sister of Audrey Meadows from The Honeymooners. That was, I always knew she had her little cameo, and I forget the actor that played his father, but it always, I always crack up when he's like, "Hello, son," because that's my dad. I talked to my dad on the phone. Here's your mother. Like talk to him for like 30 seconds. So I always get a kick out of that. Every time I see that. So, but do you think that this film, does it remind you of us? Does it remind you of us with our friend John? Is as the trio, does that come across to you in any way watching this movie?
Yeah, and anytime you have a film about people that have known each other since they were young and they've got that relationship, they've got that relationship with baseball where they all kind of know about baseball and like will say things simultaneously.
Right.
So there's a lot of parallels there. And I think that's what's so true about it. Is they really were able to portray that without telling you that. Like they just like those kind of things where they would kind of say the same baseball player at the same time, or, there's those allusions to it without having to explain, oh, we were kids and we did this together. Like that. And that's the great thing about either the writing or the chemistry between the three. Yeah. Is they were really able to kind of play off that and kind of have that lived in feel that they've known, like, cause they talk about each year they go and do something crazy. And so Bruno Kirby's character is kind of known as the guy that's always coming up with the crazy ideas, and Phil will just do anything, so they all have their slots. And then they just, you learn that pretty early on in the film. So you're kind of comfortable with that. And then they're able to build on it without a lot of screen time, like talking and going back. And then there's they have the scene with the best and worst day. So you get a little backstory there as well. Yeah. It's really great exposition, that because you feel the conversation, it feels real. It doesn't feel like they're just, throwing information at you, to the audience. So and there's no like narrator, like, like The Sandlot, for example, or something like that, where, we were friends as kids. And, you could just see like Billy Crystal, like doing that kind of thing. It could have been a totally different film if it had been done that way. Yeah. But you could see the potential for that. Could have been written that way. And let's give a shout out to Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel, who wrote Babalu Mandel, who wrote this movie among some other greats. They worked on. They wrote a ton of stuff together.
Oh yeah, they did Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, The Odd Couple. I think they got their start
Jody Loves
there.
Chachi.
Yeah, and they
As well?
did several films, A League of Their
Yeah.
Own,
Night Shift. They were
Night Shift. Yep.
a screenwriting team, also known as being script doctors. So after something was written, it needs some punching up or touching up.
Yeah.
They, script doctors really are uncredited. They kind of give it and say, hey, work. Carrie Fisher was a very famous script doctor, actually.
Yeah.
Princess Leia. She would get a lot of scripts and kind of tweak it and just fix some lines here and there and kind of punch it up. Quentin Tarantino did it a couple. I think Crimson Tide. He did some uncredited rewriting on. So yeah, that's one aspect. But these two, Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel wrote a lot of films together, so they know each other, and that's a great thing. Is if you go look at their filmography, this is pretty deep in. They had been working together. I mean, Happy Days was the 70s, and this was 91.
Yeah,
so they know each other as well. And this is really kind of just more of the same of just really great writing. Understanding Billy Crystal's type of humor and kind of adjusting to that, because Billy Crystal didn't write this, but you would think he did.
Yeah,
because he's so the focus of it, and he's so like the Billy Crystal character.
Yeah,
that you kind of
his
in
delivery,
the same way that Eddie Murphy was the character of Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop, right? We talked about that. It's like the same type of thing. Billy Crystal is playing, what we think Billy Crystal is, or what he does in his stand-up, that kind of snarky humor and kind of
he's
that
always
type of thing.
he always has always a joke.
Always got a comment.
Even when he's like really depressed, he's telling jokes, right? He's not smiling, but that's Billy Crystal. He's good at that.
Yeah.
The delivery of that is wonderful. It's
so that being able to write for that person is really important, right? Because then it would seem out of Billy, I mean, not that Billy Crystal had any type of established kind of character or style, but he was popular. He was 91, mid to early 80s. He was on SNL. So people knew he was in the public consciousness. So he was known as,
you look marvelous.
Yeah. So he was known as a comedic, a stand-up comic and a comedic actor. And then getting him to kind of be the focal point of this is really important. And he does play it. He you could come close to overplaying the forlornness and the despair of the character, and in the beginning they kind of really pile it on. So you kind of feel that this guy's really lost. Yeah. And then over time, as once they get to the cattle range and everything, that he starts to loosen up. But it's that. But his interactions with Palance are what makes this film. I mean, basically, Palance only has scenes with Billy Crystal for the most part. Like that's the whole crux of the film is the few scenes that they have together kind of centers the whole film.
Yeah, his whole change in attitude is based solely on that part where the herd with he's like making the coffee with his little instant grinding the beans, and then it starts the stampede. Everything is destroyed. So that's a little great slapstick moment in the film. But then
Curly's Palance fires the gun and all the cattle stop.
They stop, just like right on a dime.
The respect for Curly, he's like city folk. Yeah.
But then he's like, you come with me, you're coming with me, and and he's like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. So they go off to get the strays, and it actually takes them a lot longer.
Palance is like, I'll be back tomorrow, and Billy Crystal's like, you mean we'll be back tomorrow?
Right.
Because he thought he was gonna kill him.
And there's that great scene with him like sharpening the knife, at the campfire, and Billy Crystal's like playing the harmonica, and he's like,
you make a lot of smart remarks at my expense.
And he's like, put that away. And he's like, listen, I'm on vacation. I'm going to do what I want. And he's like, with the knife, and then
sharpening the knife on the leather.
But he stood up to him, and that's the turn. That's the respect that
because then
Curly
he sings that song when he's
singing the tumbleweed song, tumbling weeds, and it's like, and then there's that great banter the next day when they're riding and they're talking about the spaceship, the conversation that he was joking about with his buddies, and
would you sleep with somebody if you could get away with it? And what if it was came down on a spaceship and then would leave and no one would ever know?
And he plays right, and Curly
he
plays right into it. Curly's like, is she a redhead?
I like
you
redheads.
never thought in a million years that he would be talking about this stuff, right?
Yeah, that he would entertain that conversation.
So
he's so rough and tumble,
he breaks
and
him down. Billy Crystal breaks him down, and I think
Yeah.
there's that mutual respect there. And because of that conversation about the one thing in life and him giving
and then
birth to
the part with the calf as
Yeah.
well too. That was like the second important part as well. That because that's when he's after he gives birth to the calf. That's when Curly's like well done, cowboy. She's bursting.
It's gonna be
bursting. I didn't know there was gonna be like he's still like it's still like a life and death situation. He's like do it.
I love that scene too because it looks
he's still got the cigarette in his mouth. He's like
know
barking orders at him.
I don't know how they did it, but it looked real. I mean, it looked absolutely like
they used some puppets.
I'm sure.
I think there was 7 different calves that they used, and Billy Crystal actually did assist in the birth of one of them, and they did use some of that footage. But then obviously when Norman is like standing up, that's obviously a real thing. But they did use some puppet. I believe when they're like pulling him out.
Yeah,
that it looks real, but that was like a puppet. But there was seven different ones used, and then finally Norman was selected, and he's actually a Jersey calf, which is like a dairy cow. He's not a beef cow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people pointed that out. They're like, people who know their cows are like that cow shouldn't be like in that herd because he's a dairy cow. He's not a beef cow.
He doesn't look like a flea bag. He looks like a little fawn.
He looks like a puppy.
Deer. Yeah, he's so cute. And he's so clean looking, like compared to the flea bitten like hides of the other cows. And
all the fur is matted on the other ones. They're humping each other like it's like an orgy. The good news, I have some good news about Norman. He lived to be 20 years old, Norman.
Okay.
He retired on a ranch near the Grand Canyon. There's some pictures of Norman. He looks very much like he did when he was a baby. Like when you look at pictures of Norman before he passed away. So he lived to be 20. So 2011. Yeah. Had a good life, and he started making a lot of money too. He would get up to like $700 and $800 a day for like appearances.
Wow.
So he had his own career. He lasted longer than Palance. Palance died in 2006.
So that is
Norman lasted, and I'm glad to hear that Norman did not. And I believe all the calves that they used, I said they used like 7 different calves. I believe Billy Crystal made sure that those cows had a good life as well. Like did not, go off, because there's that whole thing at the end when they bring the cattle in, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to. We want to take them back, and they're like, they're not going back.
Yeah, they're
and they're like, what? They're like, that's another downer. It's like, no, they're going to the meat market,
right, for nothing.
And it makes you kind of think, you're like, oh my god. But then the ranch owner's like, hey, what do you think is in the cellophane that you buy? Like, where do you think that comes from? It's like.
That's what makes this movie like it's not just this big happy ending. And it's like bittersweet, so it teaches life goes on. There's still going to be some downers in life, despite the fact that he's refreshed and he's ready to go back and face his their problems and all that.
But he does bring back a souvenir.
And
he does bring back a souvenir when he comes back. He brings Norman back, so he brings Norman back in an oversized dog carrier. Because Jake Gyllenhaal's like, "Oh, we got a dog," and it's like opening up as a cow comes out.
It's a tremendous
hello
after saving his life in the river. Which was oh my god!
That was intense. I watched the movie twice,
scene.
And I was still tensed up about it. Like it's
that whole scene.
You hear the cow like bleed. It's like, and he turns around. It's like, Norman. Like you've come to like that represented so that had a representative relationship as well. Him and Norman of kind of saving his life and going after because they're like, oh, because at some point the conversations a couple of times turned to these are just cows, right? Like. After the Cowboys left, the decision was, do we leave, and David Paymer's character's like, don't take this the wrong way, but so the hell what? Or you're a better person than I am, because they were going to leave the cows to save their own lives.
Right.
And then when Norman is kind of floating, they're crossing a river towards the end, and Norman is still very small, so he can't make it. And he's like floating downstream, and Billy Crystal goes after him, and it's like a life and
saves his life, and because he's a calf, it completely that was the epiphany right there. It's like saving this baby, this baby cow made him think of his own kids. And he's like, that's the one thing for me is my family.
What was important?
Well, that's the most important thing. So yeah, it's a very touching film. It, does, again, it can't help but tear up, and you got that, you can't help that score too. It gets you every time.
Yeah.
Mark Shyman's
it's
score.
That big score. It's that big score.
Big epic
it's
Western type score, but then there's like really tender moments, and even when they're bringing the herd in, like that the music is like, it's almost like, and they're singing Bonanza's theme, but they got this music on top of it, which is, it's such a great moment for them to be. It's such a victory, and so that you could feel it. You could feel the energy there, and then you got this great music on top, and then everybody's cheering them on, and it's just a great watch. It's easy to watch. It's makes you feel good.
It's definitely a guy film as well. This is geared towards guys bonding. Kind of in the Field of Dreams range too, which came out around this time. Like all these films. About what it means to grow up or what it means to be an adult, and Daniel Stern's character says that when they're talking about their best day, he's like, well, when I got married, I was no longer a goofball. I was a man, my dad looked at me and winked at me. And so there's those notions
right
of what it means to be an adult or enter adulthood and the responsibilities that come along with it too.
To say I didn't relate to some of that myself growing up. I mean, I was always looking to grow up way too fast as a kid. I was, so certain things like really hit home for me, especially in the Phil character, because, things didn't turn out the way, you want them to. And, but you move on, so
do not call Mr. Levine. Like he doesn't even call him by his father-in-law. He calls him Mr. Levine,
Mr. Levine.
Yeah. If
then,
hate were people, I'd beat China. A lot of this, it's such a weird film because there's a lot of that, like that era comedy.
That comedy,
you're right? That is balanced with like these heavier themes.
30 seconds later, they're sitting in the tent, and there's this whole big thing about them. They're all like huddled up in one tent while the two guys are getting drunk, and they're threatening to like shoot Norman.
Yeah.
They want Mitch to come out, and it's like a really tense scene, but they're all like huddled in the tent like this. Like it's like a very comedic moment, but then he goes out there and he ends up saving and they end up getting into the fight, and then Daniel Stern with the gun. And it's like, you think it's a funny moment when he's like, I'm stressed out. I just want some peace and quiet and all this stuff. And you think that's a laugh, but then the very next scene, he's in the thing and he's holding the gun, and they're like,
talking about a do-over, and it's
let's put the gun down, buddy. It's like, it's wow. It goes, it's
my
like
life is ruined. My life is a shambles. It's kind of, they really go from one to the other pretty, because he has that whole thing. Yeah, I've got some kind of rash from making in the bushes. So you think, oh, that's kind of funny. He's like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then he goes into there, and then he's like a little catatonic. He's sitting there with the gun in his hand. It's kind of like, okay.
Oh, don't worry.
It switches gears pretty quick.
Yeah, it does, and that's the writing. Yeah. That's the writing, and the performances, the way they throw it out there. It's really good stuff. The chemistry is there. It's a great watch, a great film. I recommend it to anyone who's never seen it. It holds up very well. I think it. Certain aspects are very somewhat dated, I guess, but certain ideals, I guess, are a little dated. It's a movie great for us because we're at that age or even older now. So we're looking back and we're thinking about some stuff, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I am, I don't know about you, but because you don't even want to admit that you're,
that I'm what?
That you're getting older, but no,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're perpetually 20.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like Ed. I'm like Ed Ferrillo.
That you are. No, seriously. I mean, there's a little something to that, I think. Yeah, absolutely. So why not?
Yeah, it is one of those films that kind of, like I said, we when you're younger, you're looking at it from a different point of view. And then when you pass through that part of your life, it takes on a different kind of tone. And, when you're young, you're ideal. And he says that when he's talking, when he's giving the talk in front of his son's class,
Yeah.
He's like, you're 16, you think you can do anything, and you do, or like you're in your 20, like he really
He
does
lays it
kind of
out.
like,
Yeah, he lays it out.
he depresses the shit out of you,
He does.
and he
He
depresses the
actually
shit
does
out of the
because
kids in the class. But
it's
you know,
truth. There's a little bit of truth in that. And there's they always say it's there's truth in comedy that way. Like it's just, but it's but then especially with the other guy, who's like giving this whole big speech about the goddamn
about the
crane, and
crane,
again, hey, you
and
can't go there.
don't do drugs. At the end,
but then he comes in, and he's like and even like the teacher's like shocked, like like what are you talking about? She's a little bit up there in age, right? So she's thinking about this, and the kids are like, ooh, like, and it
they're all
completely
like
embarrasses
freaked
his
out.
son.
It's like
yeah. So
when you're 70s, you'll have a major you'll have a stroke and a major operation, and when you're in your 80s, you'll eat dinner
you'll
at
be
2,
walking around
and you'll
the
eat
mall.
breakfast the day before.
Yeah, you'll be walking around the mall saying, "Why? How come the kids don't call? How come the kids don't call?"
Looking for the best soft frozen yogurt. It's like, yeah. There's some truths in there, or maybe they're not truths, but they're fears that people have as you get older. That's really what this deals with. Is what does it mean when you get older, and what is, it was kind of like what's ahead. He basically said to his wife, he goes, I'm like, I feel like I'm trapped.
Mm-hmm.
I can't quit my job. I can't, because we have kids. They want to go to college. They want to do this. So I can't, I'm constrained by these things. And she took it obviously to heart that, you're trapped. Okay. Yeah, that's great. You're saying you're trapped.
Yeah.
And he just didn't know how to express the feeling that he was having, that things were passing him by, or what was his contribution? What's his contribution? Because that was his thing is, I sell air, because he works at a radio station. And so
what do I point to?
I sell air. I don't sell anything. Like what does it all mean? It's a weird film for these kind of big questions.
It really is. It really is. It makes you think of things like, I think we mentioned it before, like 12 Angry Men, the old man, when he's like, people, he understands the old man that was on the stand, because he's that guy, right? He's like, we want to feel important. We want to be quoted. We don't want to fade away, and that's a big fear, I think, for any guy or anybody, I think in life, is just, you want to matter. You want to be able to say certain things, and maybe, give some bit of wisdom to your kids or whatever. So, and so when the kids aren't really, there, they're not really responding to that, then you start to be like, oh, it's like, it plays for good comedy. It plays for, but that's the tragedy of things. It's like, you start to wonder, am I making a difference?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things really do come to mind. And,
he was able to kind of get re-energized and and see the value in his family, because he was kind of thinking about what he was missing, it wasn't directly said, but you get the impression he was thinking about what was he missing out on, or what, what could he have done with his life? And he realized, almost like an It's a Wonderful Life type of scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of, not, kind of taking what he had for granted, not realizing, and only when he was put to these drastic challenges and saving a life did he realize, and almost losing his own life, did he realize then what was important, what the important thing was. And
that's right.
And like Curly said, it's one thing, but it's different for everybody, and you have to figure that out.
Yeah. And he's like, at the very end, he's like, I figured it out. I know what the one thing. He's like, he goes, well, you need to figure it out. And Ed's like, I'm going to deck you, man. Tell me what it is. And he's like, no, you got to find out for yourself. And that is, and he said it himself. Like, he knew, I'm going to marry this girl. I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit. Yeah. That's his one thing. That's his moment, and then of course,
of getting over that fear,
that's right.
Getting over that fear of abandonment that he had, or that he would, he talked about that having a child is a heavy thing. And then Phil kind of understood, I do have a do-over. I all is not lost. And he kind of sachets off with Helen Slater at the end. That would not transplanted to City Slickers 2. I think they kind of like, he was such a wreck, an emotional wreck or whatever. She couldn't deal with him, on the rebound. But they would make City Slickers 2. Like we said, Bruno Kirby was not going to be involved with it. So they needed another foil. So they got John Lovitz as Billy Crystal's cousin Glenn. And of course you had to bring back, like, after all this thing that, you know, the Academy Award, the Academy Award win, all the hoo-ha swirling around Jack Palance, you had to figure out a way to bring him back. Yep. And the only way to bring him back is to bring him back as his twin brother, Duke Washburn. You know, which, you know, and City Slickers too. You know what? It's funny because we were just talking, we were saying how much we laughed at that movie and how funny it was. I was just reading about it. It was like universally panned. They're saying it's one of the worst sequels of not only of 91, but of all time. It was like up for Razzies, and
I don't know where
this is like a pale imitation, and you know, going through the motions, which it kind of is, but that's fine. That's why Austin Powers was so popular, because it was a retread of the same thing 3 times, and you didn't, as long as you didn't get tired of it, you were okay with it.
It wasn't like they were, you know, it wasn't the exact same scenario. For me, it was I thought it was very clever, actually, the way they the way they put those things together. Like, by the end of the movie, you realize that it's the same. It's Clay Stone, like he's doing something else. He's on a new endeavor,
amusement park,
you know, this new thing, and that's the clever thing about it. And then the Ira and Barry show up at the end, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But the fact that they were duped into thinking that this was real, and then Jack Palance comes in, and I thought he was remarkable. You know, he could have just played Curly again, but he really didn't, because he just had just that little bit of a difference.
He was
in the
greedy
character.
too. He wasn't the nicest guy, because he wanted the gold for himself.
Right. And there
and
is
he was a merchant
difference.
marine, which is different. He loved the sea.
He loved the sea.
And my brother Curly loved the land.
Right. But there was, I mean, yes, they spoke, very much the same, but Duke is a little bit more, I don't know, he was a little bit more goofier in moments, but I don't know, there was just enough of that change, enough of the change in character to separate him from just retreading what he did as Curly. I mean, it wasn't the same jokes. It wasn't the same, things like happening. So I don't know. I don't know where they're getting that from. I thought it was great.
A lot of callbacks to Treasure of Sierra Madre, callbacks to Maltese Falcon at the end when he's swiping at the gold with the knife.
That's right.
So that, it was a little bit more of a wink and a nod to some of those adventure films from the 40s and some of that kind of stuff.
I guess I never really
wore that on its sleeve a little bit more.
I guess I never really bothered to look to see whether or not how successful the second one was, but
the budget was like 40 million and it made like 72 or something like that. So it did okay. I mean, it wasn't as gangbusters as City Slickers was, but it was certainly a hit. It made almost double the money back. So, and of course, if you're going to get Palance, you have to beef up his role. I mean, they didn't realize what a hit this would be. So, he was only supposed to, 12 minutes of screen time. He's supposed to be there. He was a plot device. He's supposed to die to bring everybody together so they could bring in the herd. They didn't realize this guy was going to win an Academy Award out of it. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's like, okay, well, let's make another one, but now let's actually give him a part, let's put him to work.
But this one,
you have more, more of that.
You actually felt sorry for the guy, though. I mean, by the end of it, he's like, I got to have this gold, Mitch. It's, I got, he once again, he bonds with Billy Crystal. Of course, they played that up again, but he's like, but you feel like he's not just greedy, but you feel like there's that obsession has taken him, has been with him so long that he's just, it's part of him now. I need it. I have to have it. I can't walk away from this, so, that was different. That was palpable.
Yeah, it was palpable. It was more about this obsession for this hunt
story, right? Yeah. It's not about, a midlife crisis anymore. It's more about now we're dealing with something else. And maybe for him it was, because there was a purpose, that's the sad thing is that that's all he had in his life was to go after this gold. Instead of
Lincoln Washburn's gold,
instead of living his life, instead of going off and living like Curly did, which was obviously more important. He was more zen, I guess, for him. And but for this poor bastard, he's like, I got to have the gold. I got to have the gold. But got that ending, and so you're happy for him in a way. He's like, oh, come and get me. And he finds it.
Come and get me. Come and get me.
I don't know. I thought it was. It was
it was good.
Like
it was fine.
As sequels are like that. You don't like it as like the original, but I thought it was great. I thought it was
Well,
fine.
the good thing about it is because you had so little of Palance in the first one, it didn't overstay its welcome because you got what you wanted. And the second one was more of that, and the first one you didn't get enough of it because it was barely there. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's, I think, is what made it work.
Yeah.
Is you got a taste of him in the first one. You didn't even get enough. And then they delivered on that relationship and was able to kind of, get him back in through the whole twin plot device.
I like the way they beefed up the adventure aspect of the second one too. It was like, it was a full on treasure hunt. It was, you've really felt that pace and that, there's a lot of great action sequences. Oh yeah. I don't know. I didn't mind it. We had we were hysterical laughing. I mean, that's the one we did see together. And I remember, Curly, you were almost, on the floor laughing so hard in the theater.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. Again, it was of its time, and it just hit at the right time, and that's when we used to still go see a lot of stuff. We would just kind of go see almost anything,
right?
As evidenced by Highlander 2.
You had no expectation. You had no. I miss that. I miss going to films like that anymore. Like I you get older and you start to get into this stuff, and you start getting a little bit more critical. Yeah. I think that people are looking at movies everything today with a little bit more of a critical eye, and it's everybody's a critic. Everybody has their strong opinions, and it just wasn't like that back then.
Yeah.
We just go to have a good time, and so
favorite scene.
Favorite scene would be,
your favorite.
Well, I guess you would. I guess the Curly moment. I guess that's the scene where they're riding and they're talking, and that whole thing right there is probably my favorite scene. And then maybe the river part, like that whole action. Like we just mentioned, like those are the two pivotal scenes. Like the two.
What one of mine is very dated. It's a very dated scene when they're like the scene starts off and Daniel Stern's like, oh, you had a problem like this, and it's embarrassing to talk about, and I feel like much of a man, and then they end up they're talking about programming a VCR, which is so antiquated. People like, you mean you can watch, it doesn't have to be on the channel that you're recording. Like he couldn't understand that you could record and watch. He goes, no, that's the whole point of it.
But it's so true, though, right?
You don't even need a TV to record. He goes, well, how am I going to watch it? He goes, well, you need a TV to watch it, but and it's like blowing his mind, like. But the struggle was real back then.
It really was. The joke lands
on the VCR,
it
or
most definitely lands.
Figuring out how to tape something and watch something at the same time. This was all new territory. So the struggle was real for that. So I forgot about that scene, and then I'm like, oh my god, that is so ancient. But at the time, it was very timely of people struggling with their VCR. So that was a nice nostalgic.
And again, it's a little slice. It's a little slice of life that everybody
back
kind of went through, right? It was a problem. Like,
first world problems. First world problems. Those were.
Yes. Yeah.
I like those little relationship moments between the three of them, and sometimes you could see that some of this stuff might have been improv, because you could almost see Bruno Kirby like laughing and smiling when Billy Crystal's making the jokes. It almost seems like not an acting smile. It seems like he said something that was genuinely funny that may not have been in the script, and then he's got to kind of recover and kind of get back into character. It seemed very loose between those two. Bruno Kirby seemed very at ease in this film and just kind of going with it, which I kind of liked.
Yeah, the moment where he says,
I love Bruno Kirby so much,
right? And I love when he says, all that weekend warrior shit is all BS. It's like, this is real. This is where we are cowboys, and we're going to do this. You're a sporting goods salesman. He goes, not today. We're going to, right. And they do it, and they make it happen, and it's great.
You needed your cousin to help run your stores. Not today.
But not today. Right.
He had the belief the whole time. It was
the whole time he had it, even when he was doubting himself. He's forever obsessed about doing these things, but he never needed to. He never needed to do it. So that's the point, So there are those little moments in the movie. It's almost like Wizard of Oz in a way too, isn't it? Like like the Scarecrow always had the brain. The Tin Man always had a heart. You know, it's like those kinds of lessons are there in the three of them.
They go on this journey.
Yeah.
They
have to find that again. You know,
there you go. Fan theory number 1, Wizard of Oz, City Slickers is a rewrite. Which could be. They go to a faraway land. They're not in Kansas anymore.
There you
go.
They've
got Norman instead of Toto.
Yeah.
There's a storm.
Oh my goodness.
Of a hurricane.
The more we talk,
the witch. You know, Phil's wife could be the witch.
Yeah.
All right. And she's got green makeup on. She's got green eye makeup on. You might be onto something.
That's
now that
true.
I'm thinking about this, you know,
that's true. Yeah.
There could be some elements.
That's pretty wild. That is pretty wild. And you know, Mitch's wife is Aunt Em, right? She's, you know,
or she could be Glinda. She's like, go, you know, take these 2 weeks, go find your smile.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that kind of go see the wizard. So, all right, Eric, there you go. You heard it here first. We talked about Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd, which a lot of people knew about. Now we're talking about Wizard of Oz and City Slickers, which no one has come up with. So if you think that's a valid fan theory, hit us up on social media at 3324 Podcast, Instagram and Facebook. Go ahead, let us know. Think about it. Give us your advocation for it, or why that is just totally far off base. Either way, let us know.
Talking out of my butt.
No, that's true. You know, you start to think about it.
Yeah.
It makes sense when you start to think about it. So I'm okay with it.
Yep.
Yeah. It works for me. I'm going to go with it. I think it's a solid theory.
Cool.
Contrasted with all the other crazy stuff people say about films, I think this is a solid one. And you heard it here first. It came from the 33.
I'll take it.
We're claiming it. We're claiming the Wizard of Oz connection with City Slickers. So
yeah, there you go.
That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 Podcast. Thanks for joining us as we talked about a cherished film. It's kind of hard you can't really rent it. I had to subscribe to HBO Max for 1 month so I could watch it, because I didn't want to. I said I have the DVD, and you were like, well, why didn't you pull out the DVD? It's under a ton of boxes.
It's buried. Yeah,
it's buried.
Yeah.
The laziness is like, okay, let me spend $15 instead of walking 5 feet.
That's the fate of physical media.
I can't explain that logic.
Yeah. I'm looking at a whole shelf full of DVDs as I'm speaking right now. And, you know, a lot of this stuff is actually on HBO Max that I could you're so tempted to just, you know, stream this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, it's easier when it's right in front of you. So
that's right.
So yeah, you can find it. You can find it streaming on HBO Max. If you want to buy it, you can certainly purchase it. But right now, really hard to rent. So, but we highly suggest you check it out any way you can, or reach out to me and maybe I'll send you my copy of the DVD. We can Netflix it. I can send it to you, and then you send it back to me in a little red envelope, and hopefully it won't be scratched. It'll come back in one piece.
Hey,
doubt it, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you for joining us for this episode of the 3324 Podcast. For Eric, this has been Dean, asking you to please be kind and rewind.
You've been listening to the 3324 Podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 Podcast and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.